Hello and welcome to another episode of Zero BS Estate Agency. Today's guest is Rowan, an estate agent with nearly 20 years of experience out of Oxford, who believes focusing too much on maximising market value can actually distract home sellers from achieving their personal goals. Rowan argues that instead of fixating on property price forecasts, sellers should work with agents on customised strategies to find the one buyer willing to pay top dollar for that specific home. Right, so Rowan, what is the one thing that truly maximises the value of someone's home when they go to sell their property?
Facetiously, it's the property market. That's what maximises the value of people's home. So I don't really think there's a huge amount that people can actually do to truly maximise the value of their home. It's going to be governed by all of these third-party extraneous things that are happening around them at any one time. So what the key is to not get it wrong rather than to get it right.
So basically, are we saying strategy?
We're saying strategy. I think what I'm really saying is that people have all these ideas about, what kind of kitchen they could put in, whether they should knock this wall down, whether they should do this and that. And ultimately, it's not going to really matter. What's going to matter is the market conditions at any time. And market conditions can be good, market conditions can be poor. That doesn't really mean anything because the market is the market, and there's things selling in any market. So I think people get themselves incredibly hung up on what the market's doing and what the value of a property is. And the trouble with me as an estate agent, not really the trouble, but I just really deplore the whole idea about value. Value for me becomes this kind of then commodity driven market. And I know it matters because in pound coins it can make a difference to an ability to purchase at a certain price. Maybe they need a certain amount of equity out of a sale, for example, in order to buy that particular house. But I often find that people get hung up on this idea of price and value of property, and it starts to take a precedence over the reason that they want to move. What is it they want to achieve? What are they really hoping to get? And when they're in the negotiation phase, they're obsessed. They become obsessed about value. Sellers and buyers both become obsessed about value because they're listening to people like us on podcasts or people not like us on podcasts, hearing, oh, well, no, the market's going to fall by 20% this year, so I better pitch in here. That's what I'm being advised. And they get absolutely hung up on it. And if they don't get what they want, then they'll back off a property that could be the perfect property for them. And likewise, sellers are sitting there obsessed about, what they've heard or what they've been told or what they think their value is. And, the value of a property changes tomorrow. So it doesn't even matter what's really said on that sofa. But of course, they'll have three different prices from three different estate agents on that sofa. So the seller's ultimately coming up with their own idea of value that may or may not be the true value. And estate agents aren't valuers as well. So my whole problem, not the problem with the question, because it's a great question. I'm just facetious when I answer things like this, because actually value for me is the thing that just distracts people in this market and takes it away from what people should truly be thinking about is what they want to achieve in this move. And rather than the pound coins in their pocket afterwards, are they getting the size bedroom they want? Are they in that school catchment they want? Have they got the south-facing garden that they really desire because they miss living in southern Spain and they've been, feeling cold in their north-facing garden all this time? But actually, they're now not going to go and get the property they really want because of the value. So and because they're going to be there for 10 years probably, and the value will become kind of lost in this sort of weird goings on in the market over a decade that mean that it will all have washed itself out anyway by the time they ever come to need to realise any extra value in it, which was probably for the sake of £10,000 or £15,000 at this point in time stopped somebody going and getting the perfect house for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's my issue. That's my issue with value.
Well, do you know what? I do actually tend to agree with exactly what you just said, and the reason why I say is one of my tenets is every property is different, so must be treated appropriately. So to go back to what you just said about value in the market and don't be hung up on the value or the market, is because you can go from one road to the next road and the appetite for two of the same houses can be completely different within the market.
We live on a road in Oxford called Aldrich Road. And in social history, this is a fairly famous road. nobody knows it, but if you were to Google the Cutslow Wall, you'd find quite a lot of interesting stuff. Now, the Cutslow Wall, basically, Cutslow is where we live in Oxford, and it was a 1930s council estate off the Banbury Road near Summertown, a very nice bit of Oxford. And they put this 1930s council estate there, and next to that 1930s council estate, a private builder built a private housing estate just off Banbury Road. And therefore, the Cutslow residents would walk through that private housing estate to get to Banbury Road, to get on the bus to go to work or to take their kids to school or whatever it is. So therefore, the builder, in order to retain the value of his estate, built a wall, like the Berlin Wall. He just built a wall that blocked Cutslow off from Banbury Road. And this was not just a wall. This was a wall with razor wire across the top of it. You know, it was like Shanklin Road. It was a proper barrier that meant that people in Cutslow had to go around the houses to get to Banbury Road. And this was an illegally built wall in 1932 or something, 1932, something like that. And it remained up for 25 years. It came down in 1957. Even though it was illegally built, even though a Canadian tank or an American tank knocked it down doing manoeuvres during the Second World War, and even though it was protested all the time, but it got rebuilt by the council, even though it was an illegal wall, and then it finally came down. It's quite an interesting story. The point of telling this story is our road is Aldrich Road, which was behind the Cutslow Wall. So we live in a 1930s ex-council house, 3-bedroom ex-council house, but it's a 3-bedroom house ultimately, red brick built house. On the other side of the Cutslow Wall, which isn't there anymore, there's just a blue plaque on the wall that shows where the Cutslow Wall was. You've got 3-bedroom 1930s houses on Wentworth Road. So Aldrich Road and Wentworth Road kind of just converge into each other. There's no definition apart from this blue plaque on the wall, and all of a sudden they go from being, private built 1930s houses to council built 1930s houses. Yet the difference in value on effectively the same street, the difference in value is about 30% different. Wow. For the sake of one being Cutslow and the other being this, and this is almost 100 years later. And this, and why is that? Why is that? Why is there a value difference? I mean, it doesn't bother me. And actually, from us, we got a 3-bedroom house in effectively the same area as that 3-bedroom house. Our kids go to the same school as those kids. I get on the same bus as those people. It's the same. Basically, it's the same area, but this is just difference in value, and it's just a fake difference. It does, it shouldn't be there. I mean, there'll be slight differences because the council houses are ever so slightly smaller, but they're not 30% smaller, and they shouldn't be worth 30% less, but they are. Yeah. Why? Because it's a commodity market that we deal in, and that's my problem with this weird industry that we're in. Is it's become a commodity market.
So just so I'm getting it completely straight, because I have never heard it put the way you've just put it, and actually I do generally agree with you, right? But me being me, I'm trying to pinpoint exactly what it is. So it's more about, I would say then, maximizing the value of someone's home, in your opinion. Tell me if I'm wrong. It's not about the actual, the perceived value. It is about what is the strategy we're going to employ? What is the methodology we're going to employ to actually get that seller, right? Not to sell the house cheap, but how are we going to get that seller from where they are at point A to where they want to go at point B, and all the milestones in between. That's how we maximize value.
Yeah, the way to get maximum value for a property, if that's the motivation, and I just disagree, it should be the motivation. But let's say it's the motivation for Mr. and Mrs. Jones. The way to get the maximum value for your house, Mrs. Jones, is to find the one buyer that will pay the maximum price for your home. Because I'll find you 10 buyers that want to buy your home, and one of those buyers will pay more than the other 9. So how do we find them? So this, when you said, is it about strategy? Yes, it is. There's not one strategy, right? There isn't one strategy that finds that one buyer, because everyone's house is different. The area they live in might be different. So, for example, where we live happens to be in a catchment which is a very good school catchment for high school. It's in the Cherwell School catchment. So if we were selling a 3-bedroom home, which is a family home, is there a particular time of year where we might be more likely to find people who are trying to get their children into a catchment that they can then get a guaranteed place for, as well, more likely to get a place at the Cherwell school. So that might be a strategy for our house, rather than picking January to do it when actually all the school allocations already been done. So there's a bit of that, and that's just for our particular house. Actually, people often ask what's the best time of year to sell a house. I say, well, December, to be honest, because there's hardly anyone on the market, but we've still got buyers looking. So you get someone around your house now, on the 15th of December, they're probably serious, because if they weren't, they'd be in Argos, right? So actually, you're all thinking that you should put your house on the market in spring. Well, guess what? So is everybody else. So you're going to be one of 30 houses that people are then looking at. And actually, I often say avoid August, because actually everyone goes on holiday. But if I was selling a house that's definitely a first-time buyer property, I might say to those sellers, look, why don't you wait till August, July, August, because actually first-time buyers don't go on holiday in the school holiday, but first-time buyers go on holiday in early June or in the second half of September, when all the kids have gone on holiday and all of the prices are lower, because they've stacked the prices up the holiday company stacked the prices up over the summer. So your first-time buyers don't go away. So they're all still here looking over the summer. So actually, I wouldn't say that's the right time of year to do it, but it's certainly not the wrong time of year to do it for those people. Yeah. So strategy, yes. That and there could, and part of a strategy might be that you are going to need to do this kitchen. You can spend 10 grand on this kitchen and you can make £30,000 extra by doing it. It's not often the advice I give, because I often don't think that's going to work, but perhaps it is. So sometimes there's some work that that's part of a strategy, but it's not a silver bullet that I would say to people, look, before you put your house on the market, you should do a lick of paint, you should put new carpets in, you should do everything else. P.S. I think carpets are much more important than paintwork, because having new carpets in, I think that's the thing that gives the biggest lift to a property, because the smell of new carpets is something psychological going on when people walk into that house. Whereas actually paintwork, put new paintwork in, that's going to make the windows look knackered. So actually, in terms of strategy, there are little things that people could do, but it will be so different. It will be different in every single circumstance, which is why it matters to actually have somebody go around and look at these houses on behalf of sellers and give an idea of what they should do, and is there something that's going to make a difference to them, rather than think it's something that you can. And that's not even picking on these models that are the online only models, which is you don't get so many of them anymore. But you used to have this model came along 15, 20 years ago where people would put the house on the market and they just send the photos off to some call centre that was 200 miles away to put their house on the market, because they thought the only thing you need is Rightmove. Well, actually, that's kind of been disproved, because it isn't the only thing you need. You do kind of need it. You do need the portals. I mean, they are where the majority of sales come from. But nevertheless.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so again, me and my, I think there's a couple of things you mentioned. Twice you said it, which was around putting a property on, say, for example, December. Imagine you're doing that evaluation in June, right? And let's just say it's just like completely level playing field, right? Or you mentioned something about first-time buyers. Maybe that would be a good idea to put the property on for first-time buyers in August, right? What I really like about what you just said, there is no desperation from you as an agent to get that property listed now on the market, good to go, and then just taking risks.
Yeah,
you've had the confidence to effectively say, no, let's put it on for this particular property when it's right to put this particular property on for these reasons. I really like that, mate.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you have to have the courage of your convictions to be able to say that. And to be honest, it's not always easy. When I used to run a business, I ran a business until 2 months ago. So I had my own estate agency for a decade. And I've sold into a firm, and now I've got the safety net of a salary. Whereas I didn't actually. And when you are up against it, you've got cash flow, you know that you need to make £25,000 this month, and you know you're going to need to make £25,000 next month, and the month after, and the month after, and the month after. Of course, the temptation as a human being is to go, God, I need to get this business. So, and I think that's true of small estate agents, independent estate agents. It's true of the self-employed model, but it's also true of the corporate agents that are out there with targets to hit, where they need to put 20 houses on the market a month, or they're going to get hauled into a probation meeting. So there's too much pressure in this industry to give the wrong advice. Okay, and that's a big issue. So I would have prided myself on being. I mean, that's how I presented myself. So we would class ourselves as being the honest estate agent and wanting to give that advice. And usually and I would always take the view that actually, even if you don't get the sale now, the benefit of that advice comes back in karma, because they're more likely to go and recommend you around. And that's what you always, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but having taken that approach, if you ever, there's a Facebook community group, Oxford community group on Facebook, and if anybody ever asks for an estate agent recommendation, it really genuinely does get flooded with, oh, you should speak to Rowan Waller. And in fact, another estate agent's just recommended me to a valuation I've done yesterday, because it was a friend of his, and he's obviously, he's going to get the sale, but his friend needed to get a second opinion, so he's recommended me. And of course, I'm not going to go in there and step all over his toes and try and pinch an instruction off him either. But it is all part and parcel of developing a reputation for being honest and straightforward. But it definitely has gone against me so many times, because I'm up against we need to get 20 instructions this month. If I'm only on 15 and it's the 28th of the month, I need to get 5 more by Thursday. And they're going to say what they need to say, unfortunately. And I've been there. I've been in that position. I've been in agency for almost 20 years. So I've kind of been through big corporate at Countrywide. I've been through big independent that, operates in the corporate way at Chancellors. So it's highly targeted. And I understand that pressure is there. And I think that no amount of ROPA or anything else that's coming in, licensing for estate agents, none of that is going to alter the fact that these are still businesses that run commercially and need to make money. So, we definitely in corporate life were in training courses going, this is how you convince someone. If somebody's calling, they say they just want to get an up-to-date valuation on their house and they're not thinking moving for 2 years, you're still there trying to get the listing. You've got to find a reason that they give them the listing price that gets them on the market now. Is that good or bad estate agency? Is it good? It's good business. It's probably good agency, but I don't know. For me, it's morally corrupt. And that's why I wouldn't actually say those companies are bad companies, and they're great businesses and they help a lot of people, don't get me wrong. But I couldn't stay in it. I couldn't stay in it myself. And it's the whole point of setting up, when I set up in 14, was to do it my way. But ultimately, don't get me wrong, I didn't go bust or anything, but I wasn't doing well enough as an agent, running the way I was, running this kind of moral, ethical business that I was trying to run. I couldn't make enough money. I wasn't doing enough business. Even with that, even being the most recommended estate agent on Facebook in Oxford, even having I know I've got a decent enough reputation in the industry, but all that, I'm still looking at next year, 2024, coming down the line, thinking, I don't know, I don't feel robust enough to think I'm definitely going to survive it. So I looked for an exit, and in my head, I would have loved to have got to 10 years and done till June 24. But I balanced it up, and I thought, you know what? I've got some value in the business now, and I've sold to an agent that's a bigger version of what I am. So in fact, we actually brand ourselves as the ethical agency at College and County, which is where I now am. So I chose somebody who has the same moral inclinations as I do. And in fact, these guys set up 20 years ago for similar reasons. They got shafted by another estate agency as landlords, basically. And then thought there must be better ways of doing this ethically. So they they weren't estate agents, they set up a firm in order to do estate agency in the way that they as landlords felt they should be treated. So of course, we're aligned in that way. But there's some risk in there is some business risk in having morals in this game. And I think that's a problem that regulation won't solve.
Yeah. Do you know what? And I completely agree on that. I mean, look, licensing, no, it comes down to ethics for me. It comes down to, is the person willing to do the right thing? Again, I agree with you. It is painful especially when not only are you got the right skill set, the right knowledge, know-how, the right understanding, you can see the punches coming, you know how to get somebody to completion. Unfortunately, there are a load of cognitive biases that, you know what, when a seller is selling, they do not do due diligence. Due diligence is done on Rightmove. And then come to the conclusion that my house is better than what's already on, but not realizing that the prices on Rightmove are generally overinflated for all the reasons you've just said. But when they become a buyer, holy shit, they know everything they need to know about the property that they're buying. And then there is a big gap between them both. And so in one sense, they want to go, well, the agent said to me that they can get me another 50 to 75 grand more. Yeah. This means we now can buy this, but hang on, what we want to buy, there's no proof. There's no proof it's worth that amount of money. And all these agents are trying to get deals done. They're telling me what the real pounds per square footage is of all the houses that we're seeing with them. So how has that seller come to that conclusion that house is worth so much more, but not thinking the same about themselves? And I suppose what we're actually saying is that people say to me, John, because by the way, Rowan, I share the same ethos as you, right? I know that we are massively up against it. Massively up against the charlatans in the industry that say things that sound nice to get people to sign up to long contracts, and it's all shite, right? Someone from a big independent said to me, John, why do you care so much about what a seller achieves? That's not down to you, mate. It's not down to you to what they achieve. And I'm like, no. If I know something, I need to tell them. I can't not tell them just to get a contract signed. But here's the thing. If there were 10 valuations, 10 market appraisals, and I won 2 of them, and those 2 that I've won are with people that like the way I think, then I've won 100% of my market. And I generally believe the way that you're doing it right now, and tell me if you think you've got a different opinion, the way you're doing agency and have done, and the reason you set up the previous business, I think now more and more people are becoming more ethical. I may be living in an echo chamber, but what I am seeing though is a lot more people, a lot more agents actually going, do you know what? I want to do it my own way actually. But my way is the ethical way. So actually it's more about service and what somebody can do service wise, as opposed to saying things that sound nice. Would you agree with that or not?
I would agree. And I would certainly say, I would say it's there's 2 drivers, I think, that drive. There's a lot of people going into the self-employed model. In fact, I think you're in the self-employed model. So you're perhaps proof. You're perhaps proof of this pudding. I think that what drives people into it are 2 things. One is thinking, oh, God, I'm making 50 grand a month for this firm. I should really be making it for myself. Even if I'm not making 50 grand, I'll make myself 10 grand a month, and it'll be mine to keep. It's a perfectly good reason. Perfectly good. But the other reason is people want to do it their own way, and doing it their own way is often ethically driven. I think people do feel a lot of people in those firms. I don't, and I'm certainly not mentioning names of firms. I kind of mean any big kind of bigger firm where it has to be systemized to work. You just can't run a big firm unless it's systemized. But it can feel a bit like just a template that's being just put on top of any sale, and I think there's so many moving parts in any individual's life of why they want to move, that actually this kind of template system doesn't necessarily work. And those people who feel like they can't break out of that, they have to do it this way, but they shouldn't be done this way. I think there's ethics involved in that, even if they're not thinking this isn't ethical. It is. It's around the same thing. Is that I don't think it's right for this customer, and being forced to do it that way pushes them often into. And I think it used to push people into independent estate agency, in a smaller independent where there was a kind of an owner manager that was doing it their way, and this person thought, well, that's the way I want to also do it, so I like the look of them. But now that these models, the KW, the EXPs, the Agency UK, the Avenue, all of those that allow people to effectively go out and be their own person and do it and put their own stamp on things locally. I think that's why they can literally go, and especially people putting their own faces on the board, going, this is me, and this is what I believe in, this is how I'm going to do it. Whether that's I'm going to be wearing flat caps and jeans and a jumper, that's me, or whether it's I'm going to do it by I used to love the singing estate agent. I wish she was still around, but Claire Cossey, I think she was called. But absolutely doing it her way, and it was just and it's just kind of going, look, this is this is who I am. Do you like me enough to want to use me? Because this is what I'm presenting to you. And I think the choice now for sellers is vast, as long as those people can get their message out there. And I think obviously that's the toughest thing, is how do you break through to a marketplace? Because even, do you know what? I know I've got a decent reputation, but there are people with houses to sell in Cowley, that in Oxford, that have never heard of me. Whereas there are estate agents sitting in Lytham St Anne's that follow my every move. So, it's what is reputation really, and where's it useful?
Yeah, no, totally. Right, mate, Rowan, honestly, I love your insights. That's just wicked, because I can just go, oh man, that's a different way of thinking. I really like that.
Oh, I am different. I'm definitely different.
Oh, yeah, which is amazing, by the way, especially your poetry videos. But honestly, thank you so much for coming on and sharing how you feel it should be done. Again, do you know what? You're exactly right. You're doing it exactly the right way, and I wish you even more success than you had in the previous life.
Cheers, mate. Well, you've got to go through good to be great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, mate. End of podcast.